It was supposed to be the perfect evening. The kind of night every woman dreams about. Our 10th wedding anniversary. A reservation at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the city skyline. Candlelight flickering between crystal glasses. The waiter calling me Mrs. Lawson with that respectful tone that made me feel proud of the life we had built. At least, the life I thought we had built. I spent hours getting ready that evening. I wore the dress he bought me from Paris 2 years ago. I wanted him to look at me and see the woman he fell in love with. I wanted him to remember our beginning. But I did not know that he had already planned the ending. When he walked in, he looked calm. Too calm. He was dressed in his usual tailored suit, his hair perfectly styled, his smile polite but distant. I noticed the difference immediately. There was no warmth in his eyes. Not the kind that used to make me melt when we first met. He complimented me, said I looked beautiful, but his voice sounded mechanical, rehearsed. Still, I brushed it off. I thought maybe he had a rough day at work. He always did lately. I tried to keep the conversation light, to bring back the spark, but his attention kept drifting to his phone. He barely touched the champagne. I started to feel a knot forming in my stomach, that strange sense when you know something is wrong before it's said aloud. After the main course, he reached into his jacket. I thought he was taking out a small box, maybe jewelry. I had imagined him handing me a necklace or bracelet, saying something romantic. Instead, he pulled out a white envelope and slid it across the table. He said nothing at first. Just looked at me, waiting. I stared at the envelope, confused. I asked what it was. His answer cut through me like a blade. Divorce papers. At first, I thought it was some kind of cruel joke. I even laughed nervously, but he didn't. He looked at me with that cold expression I had never seen before. He said he was done. He said he had been unhappy for years, that we had grown apart, that it was time to move on. I felt the world collapse around me. The restaurant lights blurred. My chest tightened. I could barely breathe. I whispered, "You're leaving me on our anniversary." He just nodded, like it was a business decision. I asked him why he chose tonight. He said it was symbolic. A clean end to a decade. Those words still echo in my head. I didn't cry there. I refused to give him the satisfaction. I looked around and realized people were watching. I straightened my posture, forced a calm smile, and asked the waiter for the check. My voice didn't even shake. I think that made him uncomfortable. He expected tears, maybe begging. Instead, I simply said, "Thank you for the last 10 years. I wish you well." Then I stood up and left him sitting there, stunned. I didn't look back once. That night I drove home in silence. The city lights outside blurred through my tears. When I walked into our house, the reality hit me. Our photos on the walls, our shared memories in every corner, suddenly felt like lies. I sat on the couch for hours staring at nothing. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope again. Everything was neatly arranged. He had already signed. He wanted me to sign too. There was even a note from his lawyer. I realized then that this wasn't a sudden decision. He had planned it for months. That hurt the most. The next morning, I did something unexpected. I didn't break down. I didn't call my friends or family. I didn't go to his office to scream or demand answers. I went for a walk. I needed to think. I replayed our years together, every moment, every sign I had ignored. The late nights at work, the new cologne, the secretive texts. It was all there. I had been too trusting, too focused on keeping our marriage stable to see the truth. But that morning, my grief turned into something else. Clarity. And then, cold determination. If he wanted a clean end, he was about to get one. But not the way he expected. You see, my husband, Richard, always underestimated me. He thought I was the quiet wife who depended on him for everything. He thought I didn't understand his business affairs, that I was just the woman who hosted dinners and smiled for photos. But what he never realized was that I had been paying attention. Every meeting, every contract, every financial decision he discussed at home, I absorbed it all. He taught me more than he ever realized. And now, I was going to use it. I spent the next week pretending to be broken. I replied to his lawyer politely, said I needed time to process. I ignored his messages when he asked if I was okay. He had moved into an apartment downtown, near his office. He told me we could settle everything peacefully. I agreed. Outwardly, I was calm. Inside, I was making a plan. I wasn't going to destroy him emotionally. That would be too easy. I was going to take away what he valued most. His reputation, his money, his comfort. I started by contacting our accountant, pretending to review some documents related to the divorce. The accountant was sympathetic. He knew me well. He assumed I was trying to understand my finances. That gave me access to everything. I discovered Richard had opened new accounts under his company name. Money had been moved quietly over the last 6 months. Large sums. Enough to make me realize he was preparing for this long before he even handed me the papers. He was hiding assets so he could claim we had less to divide. Smart move, but not smarter than me. I made copies of every record, every transfer, every invoice. Then I contacted a financial investigator I knew through a friend. I told her I suspected my husband was committing fraud. She asked for details, and I gave her everything. Within a week, she confirmed what I had started to suspect. Richard had been using company funds for personal expenses, disguising them under fake contracts. That was embezzlement. He wasn't just leaving me. He was breaking the law. I could have gone straight to the authorities. But I wanted more than legal punishment. I wanted him to feel what I felt. Betrayal, shock, loss. So I waited. I kept playing the role of the hurt but cooperative wife. I met him for coffee to discuss the divorce terms. I smiled, I nodded, I acted fragile. He looked relaxed, confident. He told me he was seeing someone new. He said it gently, as if that would make it less cruel. Her name was Claire, his assistant. I already knew, of course. I had seen her messages weeks ago. He thought he was in control. But I let him talk, let him feel powerful. Because I was setting the stage for his downfall. By the time the final meeting with our lawyers came, I had everything ready. I asked for only what was fair. Half of our assets, no alimony, just a clean split. He agreed easily, almost too easily. He wanted me out of the picture. He thought he was getting away with everything. But the night before we signed, I made my move. I sent an anonymous email to his company's board of directors. Attached were all the documents showing his financial misconduct. Transfers, receipts, fake vendor lists, everything. And I didn't stop there. I sent the same email to a financial journalist who had once interviewed us for a business magazine. I knew she would recognize the story potential immediately. Then I went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. My phone was full of messages. News outlets had already started calling his company. His name was all over the headlines. CEO under investigation for misuse of funds. The company's stock started to drop within hours. He called me repeatedly, but I didn't answer. When I finally picked up, his voice was shaking. He asked if I had done it. I simply said, I told you I wanted a clean end. This is it. Then I hung up. The next few weeks were a storm. The company suspended him pending investigation. The woman he left me for quit the same day his scandal went public. Investors pulled out. Everything he had built began to crumble. I watched it unfold quietly, almost peacefully. People started whispering about how suddenly I had left the marriage, how calm I had been. Some suspected I knew something. I never confirmed or denied anything. I just smiled and moved on. When the divorce was finalized, I received my share legally and cleanly. He couldn't contest it. He had bigger problems now. Investigators found that some of his transactions violated federal laws. He faced charges. His lawyer tried to settle, but the damage was already done. His company pushed him out completely. He lost everything he once bragged about owning. His penthouse, his car, his position, even his reputation as a respected businessman. All gone. Meanwhile, I moved into a smaller house by the coast. Quiet, simple, peaceful. It felt good. For the first time in years, I felt free. Months later, I ran into him by accident at a cafe downtown. He looked older, thinner, exhausted. He tried to smile, but it was empty. He said he wanted to talk. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. We sat across from each other, just like that night at the anniversary dinner, except this time the power had shifted. He apologized, said he made mistakes, said he should never have hurt me. I listened silently. Then he asked if I had anything to do with his downfall. I met his eyes and said, "You did that yourself. I just stopped protecting you." He didn't respond. He just nodded, defeated. That was the last time I saw him. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it. If I feel guilty for what happened to him. The truth is, no. I gave him 10 years of loyalty, love, and trust. He chose deceit. He ended our marriage on a night meant to celebrate it. That was his choice. My revenge wasn't about anger. It was about balance. He took something from me that night, and I took something back. Fair trade, I suppose. After everything, I rebuilt my life quietly. I started consulting for small businesses, helping women understand their finances, making sure they never feel powerless the way I once did. Every time I sign a new client, I think of how differently things could have gone if I had stayed silent. But silence is what he counted on. And that was his biggest mistake. One evening, a year later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Richard. The handwriting was shaky. Inside, he wrote that he had left the city and was starting over somewhere else. He said he hoped I found peace. At the bottom, he wrote, "You won." I stared at that line for a long time. I didn't feel joy, just closure. I realized my revenge wasn't just about destroying him. It was about reclaiming myself. The woman he thought was weak had turned out to be the strongest player in the game. Looking back, I sometimes think about that anniversary dinner. The candles, the wine, the silence between us. If I could go back, I wouldn't change anything. That night he handed me divorce papers, he unknowingly handed me freedom. And what I did with it was priceless.